Wow, he stole my clap. That's crazy.
Interception.
All right, we're starting this whole thing over again.
You know what? Burn it.
Welcome back to the BG Perform podcast with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes. That was a hard
What's
one to say. I
up?
almost said coach, co-host, coach,
Cohort.
cohort,
Cohort.
Jerry
Trying to
Hayes.
study.
How was the week,
Should be
Jerry?
studied. My week was good. So far. My training is honestly, dude, I realized I hadn't taken like a proper deload or like manage my volume recently. I just switched my program and I've been kind of going a little nuts with it. I found inspiration in training in a different way, and anytime I do that, I get overexcited, and I realize that I've been pushing it pretty hard for a few weeks,
Okay.
more than a few weeks. So I just switched it up. This week's a deload because my body kind of felt like it was falling apart, but deload is going well. We just have a little slightly higher volume, lower the weights a little bit, just crushing it. I've been doing good though, sleeping well, feeling great.
Beautiful.
How about you,
Awesome.
Brandon?
My week was not a great start. Let's just put it that way. I got slammed on my shoulder in jiu-jitsu, AC joint separation. This is like probably one of the biggest injuries I've ever had in my life. First off, besides
You
my
broke your foot.
broken foot, I was gonna say besides my foot.
Yeah.
This is probably second biggest then because my foot was like 3 months, but this one's probably gonna be a few weeks. Some dickhead at the gym doesn't know how to train, went way too hard, and when I get back, I'm gonna Masvidal him. I'm gonna
Please do.
flying knee Masvidal. No, I probably won't because that's just not. It's not worth going back into that. But it's probably gonna be a couple months till I'm back in jiu-jitsu. Unfortunately, training is going to come to a halt this week and most likely next week. The good thing is, next week I did have a planned deload, so just a little step back because I'm still planning on getting ready for this. I think I'm gonna be more than fine. I was planning on doing a half marathon in November, and I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be able to do that. I don't think this is going to be more than 2 or 3 weeks. If anything, it's just going to stop me from lifting, so it's going to help me lose a little bit more weight and hopefully get a little bit faster in the run. So, got to look in the bright side because after what happened was basically I got slammed on my shoulder. I got a nice big bruise here too. Danielle told me yesterday. I don't know if you can really see it in the light, which makes
Maybe
sense.
a little bit.
When I got slammed, I was sitting there and I felt like I just got like punched in the head. And I was like, fuck. And I was like seeing stars. And I was like, what is going on? And there was people coming up to me. They're like, oh, do you want ice? Do you want ice? I'm like, I don't think ice is going to fix this. And like my bones like sticking up out of my shoulder.
Oh.
And I was just like, I was like, I'm good. Just leave me alone. Like I had to take a second. I was breathing. I was just dripping in sweat just all over the floor. It was a mess. And then, I called my mom. My mom doesn't make anything better. She's freaking out. I'm like, just relax. We're driving down the street, and she's hitting every fucking pothole possible. And I'm like, dude. I'm like, please, just slow down. Like, just slow down. But anyway, so
I'm not dying. I don't have to get there faster.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So yeah, made it to the whole X-ray thing. Found out it's like a grade 2-ish sprain, which isn't the worst thing in the world. I haven't even told Jerry about the guy that I talked to. He was like such a weird guy. The doctor, like, he just walks in. He's like strolling in. He's like, "How are you?" And I was like, I'm sitting there. I'm like, "I've been better." He's like,
Yeah.
"I can see." I'm like, "All right."
You get Tom Segura's doctor?
He comes in. He's like, "So what happened?" He's like, "Some trouble in the ring?" I was like, "No, I was just training like jujitsu. Someone threw me on my shoulder." He's like, "All right, stand up. Take off the sling." I was like, all right. He like presses on my shoulder on the right sside. He's like, does that hurt? I was like, yeah. And he put us on the other side. He's like, does that hurt? I was like, no. And he's like, all right. He's like, he's like, what did the doctor tell you yesterday? And I told him everything the doctor said. Told him everything the doctor said, and he goes, yeah, sounds about right. He's like, I was like, all right. Like, you gonna give me anything here? I was like, what grade is it? He's like, yeah, it's a little bit closer to a grade 2. A little bit of a grade 1, but mostly a grade 2. He's like, gonna be a couple weeks. He's like, if it feels good, be careful. I was like, all right, like anything, like what? Do you remember that story of the tape guy I told you at Staples?
Yes.
It was like it reminded me of that guy. Like it's
There's
just
something
like,
in the water. Did a real
yeah.
doctor come in after and be like,
Well,
sorry,
he
he got
was
out
the
from underneath
doctor.
the operating table and
Yeah,
brought
I
him
don't know.
away?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe that guy was faking it, but um, pretty funny. But anyways, I'm good. My shoulder's
So
moving a little bit
stupid.
better, as you can see. It's a little bit tender at the moment, but should be hopefully by the end of this week. The pain should die down and the swelling should go down, and we will be back to normal. Nick's on vacation next week, so I was planning that deload. So now I'm just gonna, we'll see, figure it out. Got to do what I got to do, you know.
You can do a reload week.
Reload.
Deload this week, reload next week.
Yeah. Now I'll probably,
So
we'll see. I'll probably have to
you
take next
just
week off too.
grab a gun and you bring it to the jiu-jitsu gym.
I can't even itch my arm. I was just itching, trying to itch my arm. I have to climb it up my hand. Anyways, so today we are going to be talking about over cueing or over coaching and why it is the silent career killer for coaches. I think this is a really important topic because I think Jerry and I, from experience, have both dealt with this, right? I don't think any coach, and I think this is a really important thing. I think that even early on in your career, you can get taught about cueing, but until you're in it, until you're going through it, until you're having people mess up in front of you and realizing how poorly aware people are of their bodies and how sometimes they just don't respond to certain cues, you're not ever gonna get used to it, and there's not really anything anybody can teach you about it, if that makes sense. Like it's one of those things you can get taught, and you're not gonna know until you know, right? And I think it's a really important thing for us to kind of dive into right away because with our first segment of the show from the floor, I've had so many instances in my career, and I remember very early on in my career when I was coaching, I had people who were doing, you know, intense movements, or I was having people that were doing, just movements in general, and they might be new to it, right? They've either never done a movement before, or they've never really done fitness before, and they're starting these new movements. I remember early on, I saw so many things that were wrong with certain people, and I saw so many things that were, you know, um, you know, just not done right, and you want to fix those things when someone's in there in the moment. And funny enough, my story last week is about Jim, right? My client Jim, and this story is going to be another story about him again. And like I said, reason why is because he's just bringing back so much of that like basics of coaching for me that I love those sessions right now. Like I'm really enjoying those sessions. And for example, there was so much that we could improve in his session, right? But in my head, I'm like, what's the most important thing? What needs to be talked about right now? What's gonna be the most bang for my buck at this very moment in time, as opposed to trying to fix and cue seven different things. Yeah, he might be doing something that doesn't look perfect, right? But it's like, is me trying to get every single little detail going to help him, or is him doing the movement as best as he can in that time and getting 10 to 12 reps done going to better suit him, right? Because if we really break down every single pattern, and like this is why I don't, there's certain types of movements and fitness that's out there now that I just don't like, because it's like at a certain point you have to do something, right? Like obviously if we look at all types of movement, we could cue everything to the point where we're like, all right, well, you probably shouldn't move because you can't do it right, right? When it's like, all right, well, that's obviously not going to happen, right? Not everybody can squat perfectly. Not everybody can deadlift perfectly. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We just have to be aware of the things that we need to fix. And specifically in the first couple sessions with Jim, I had to hold myself back a little bit because I was seeing these things and I remembered, I was like, oh, this, fixed it, watch this. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait, chill. Because like he doesn't know what any of this means, first off. And as a coach, I know what I'm looking for, but like all of that is not important at this very moment in time. It's just like, hey, let's just squat, right? Let's just work on a lat pull down and we'll work on the little details as we go. One of my favorite things in coaching that I like to do is if there's multiple things that need to be fixed, I personally like to go from the top, most important. And usually, if you cue it well enough, it fixes everything else. But I'll do them in between each set, right? So the first set, let's talk about lat pull down. It might be as we're pulling down, he's rounding his shoulders forward and he's finishing with like a cave chest almost, right? So I'm going to tell him, hey, Jim, let's get those shoulders back a little bit more. Let's get that chest a little bit more proud. As he's doing that, maybe he's still pulling a little bit low on his chest. So the next one's like, hey, shoulders were great there. I just want you to pull a little bit higher on the chest on this last set, right? Now he's pulling that bar a little bit higher on the chest. Those shoulders are coming back. The chest is proud. But at the end, he's not extending his arms all the way up, and he's only kind of going through like a quarter range of motion. So on that very last set, it's like, hey, both things we just fixed, great. I want you to keep doing what you're doing there. But now I just want us to get a nice full extension at the end on those reps on that last set, right? Now we just fixed basically everything one by one so we could digest it, take it in, do it, and now complete the reps, right? Doesn't mean everybody's always going to have 5 or 6 things that are going to go wrong, but with someone like Jim, who's very new into the gym, a lot of his things that are kind of like in the way are more mental than physical, right? So we have to adjust these things to build confidence and not tear them down too. Because I think sometimes we forget as coaches, people are walking in and obviously they want to be better, but no one wants to walk into a gym and be like, wow, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, right? And I think we're kind of in this setting right now as coaches where we feel like, well, I'll save this because I want to talk about this in the podcast. But yeah, so Jerry.
Yeah, that's tough too because obviously you wanna hit all the key points to be as efficient as possible, especially if you're within like if it's like a half hour, full hour session. You're trying to fit as much as you can into it. Obviously, keeping things concise is huge. So trying to like hit all the big cues at once seems like the right thing to do, but the in between sets thing is probably the best way to go about it. For me, like I remember when I first started, I started off. This was when I was in an internship at Next Level in Rochester, and there was a head coach. He programmed everything out, and then us interns and the other coaches would be working with. Like the interns would work alongside one of the coaches who was hired there to like run the class, and we were essentially like an assistant coach. Mm-hmm. And when I was coaching, it was a hinge, which is obviously it's like one of the tougher things to get down for a lot of people. One of the kids, no matter what cue I gave him, like I gave him cue number 1, and he kept doing the tuck tailbone thing where it looks like a dog about to poop, you know? So, yeah, am I doing it right? Not even close. Unless you're trying to take a shit and the position a dog does, that not close. Cue number 1, like, all right, let's get those hips back. And then, like, obviously they're tucking the tailbone. So it's like, all right, poke your butt out a little bit to try and, like, because at this point, I was trying to really reduce that. So I was like, poke your butt out a little bit. Almost try to create an arch in your back. Maybe, like, the over cue will get him to find the neutral. Sometimes that works. It didn't. And then the next cue, it was just, like, tucking the tailbone, and then instead of moving the hips up, they just like move the head back type thing. And it's like, yeah, we're not getting there at all. And being that I was an intern at the time and I was super green on the floor for coaching, I didn't really think like, okay, this program, my thought process is this program was created by the head coach. We need to stick to this program. This is the plan. This is what they do. So I was trying to find every way I could to get this movement to be done correctly by this kid. And then a coach there, Joe, he came over. He was like, dude, just swap the exercise. I was like, oh, okay. All right. I was like, I don't think we're allowed to do that. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll swap that. So we just ended up going with a different exercise. But at the time, I was so like, do what's on paper, do the program, figure it out, cue it and drill it however you need to get it done right, when sometimes the simplest thing to do is kind of regress and then build up to it. Yeah. So that was one of the biggest things is understanding that even though you have a plan, it's okay to deviate.
And I think that's a really good segue into like just the main topic of just talking about, you know, why overcoaching or overcueing can really like literally be like a silent career killer, right? Mm-hmm. Because when we talk about coaching, we obviously want to find a balance between allowing people to learn and then cueing them and coaching them, right? Obviously, people come to us to improve as a coach, and they come to us to improve their fitness or whatever it is they're trying to improve inside the session. But I think sometimes as coaches, we kind of get caught in the spot where we feel like we need to fix things and we need to make them, like Jerry just said, kind of fit into a movement pattern, or we have to fix everything at once, like I talked about in my initial story. And that's really like early on, you feel that way because there's a lack of experience, because you don't have the confidence to be like, hey, well, this isn't working. Let's just try something else, right? And you'll learn very quickly that as you start to do more coaching and more cueing, that oftentimes it's like, am I going to sit here and cue someone through a movement where they could probably only do 10 pounds, right? Like, are they going to get the adaptation that we need? Or can we just change it so we can actually get the adaptation we need and then come back to that at a later point or work on that at a different time, right? And that's where we kind of need to find this balance. And I think that over cueing can obviously take away from the results, but it can also take away from the confidence of the person because, like I said, no one wants to come into the gym and just constantly be told like, you're wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, fix this, fix this, fix this. It's like, some people just want to train, feel good, lift heavy weight, and that's it, right? Like some people just literally don't care. As long as they're not getting hurt and they're in a position that's safe enough, they're just like, cool, I just want to be here. I just want to lift weight. I want to go home and tell my wife, my friends, my girlfriend, whoever, I want to tell them about it so they can be like, wow, you're strong, right? And sometimes they don't care about the in-betweens. Obviously, you want to keep them safe, and us as coaches, we need to find that balance or that in-between of like, hey, here's where I need you to be. Here's where, you are right now. Let's find that in-between, right? And I think that over coaching is really just a sign of like lack of experience or lack of truly understanding like where you're at and what you're trying to do inside of the session, right? And I think, from my experience, obviously as I've gotten more experience in coaching, as I've done this longer, I've continued to realize that when I'm over cueing, right, it's either a movement that I personally haven't had as much experience in, or it's something that I'm not like fully aware in the moment of what's going on in front of me, right? And I say this because I think some of us, and this is why it's so important as a coach to like dabble in so many things and be able to coach, because a lot of the cues you say might not fucking make sense if you've never done the movement, right? Like, sometimes with some of these movements, you're hearing people cue things and you're like, have you actually done this movement? Because like that doesn't make any sense, right? One specifically might be like a back squat, like everyone's favorite is like the knees out cue or that type of cue. And I know I'm gonna let you talk in a second because obviously you must have something. But
the train's coming, so I gotta mute my mic anyway.
Oh, okay. And like those types of cues where it's like if you actually did this movement, you'd be like, oh well, wow, that cue doesn't really work, right? Or it doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things. And that's such an important thing because we don't want to be unnecessarily cueing. We don't want to be inefficiently cueing throughout the course of a session, right? Is there something you wanted to add to that?
No, it was just a story of just cueing, over cueing, or kind of under cueing due to lack of understanding a movement. That's all. There was a coach when I was working at one of the gyms I was at, and there are a million things that can go wrong in a Turkish get up. And like, for some reason, this dude loved Turkish get-ups. I never saw him do a Turkish get-up in my life. Except, like, he was always talking about Turkish get-ups. He's like, Turkish get-up's really good for core stability, a little anti-rotation in there. You get to use the scapula a lot. And I was like, yeah, you get to use a lot, huh? And he was like, and on top of that, just learning how to control the hips. And he was just going on about how much he loved them. Later that night, I looked to my left, and I see this dude coaching it, and he's on the ground, and he's got like a 10-pound dumbbell in his hand, doing the Turkish get up, and he goes, so you're gonna hold it in the air, and then you're just gonna stand up like this, and he literally just popped up off the ground and just kind of stood up really quickly. He was like, all right, now you go. I remember I was like this. So I'm looking to the left. My friend Dylan's over here coaching somebody else, and I was like this. And he's looking there. He goes, his mouth is actually open. He goes, and he comes over to me. He goes, dude, we gotta say something. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to embarrass him or make his client feel like, hey, don't do that. Like your coach is an idiot. But when I looked over at Dylan and he was like this, his mouth fully open.
I feel like you got it. I mean, hopefully you said something or at least took him through the movement.
Well, she, the client, was basically like, I don't know how to do this. He was like, you know what, let's do something else. And switched it up. And it was like an overhead lunge instead. He was like, we'll start here. And his arms just all over the place. But that was one of those things where I was like, hey man, like I think I got a few tips for you to like help a client understand a Turkish get up more if you want to start getting it he was like, yeah, it's great for the scapula. You do a lot. I was like, yeah. So it just, when you mentioned the not understanding a movement, like, have you done this before? That was the
Yeah.
first thing that popped in my head.
Yeah, and I think it's like a really good example because I think a lot of people see stuff, they go through movements, and I think that oftentimes they miscue because they haven't actually had a lot of experience in it and haven't done it, right? And I think one of the other things, like, that's a little bit, well, I wouldn't say a little bit, annoying about overcoaching somebody is like you don't want to micromanage your athletes because one, that kills autonomy, right? Like that kills the opportunity for them to make a decision in the movement. And I think one of the biggest things that is like there's three big things that I think in maybe three. It'll come to me as I'm explaining it. But there's a few big things that really stand out in fitness that aren't usually talked about outside of like the sets and reps. One is rhythm, right? And rhythm being like, can I move my body with, with time and space, right? Can I move it around certain things? Can I move it at a certain pace? Can I like create rhythm within my squat? Do I know when I can bounce out of the bottom? Do I know what it feels like to hit that really sweet spot of a squat or a bench, right? Like we all know when we hit those sticking points, but do I know what it feels like? And that's part of rhythm too, right? It's when do I make that transition from eccentric to concentric, right? The second one is autonomy and decision making, where it's like, hey, I'm in a movement, like how does my body need to react to change, right? Because while I do think we need to cue a lot of things, no single person really is the same in movements. Like we have a general idea of how someone is supposed to move, but deadlift is a great example, right? A lot of people over cue the deadlift to oblivion, the neutral spine, head this, grip this, legs this. And then you're looking at the best deadlifters in the world and they're deadlifting with a rounded back and they're deadlifting with like, extended hand or a wider grip. And you're just like, wait a second, like why is guy deadlifting, a kilo or not a kilo, a ton, and the other person's over here doing perfect posture, like can barely deadlift 135, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like at a certain point we have to give up this idea of like over cueing and over coaching to the point that you're almost not allowing the person to make those decisions inside of the rep, inside the set, inside the exercise, inside the session to get better at the movement and improve on the things that they need to improve on. Because at the end of the day, like again, we have an idea of how someone is supposed to move, but what we don't have is an exact science of like, wow, Jerry's going to look the same as me squatting, because it's just not going to happen, right? Same thing with bench, same thing with overhead press, same thing with push-ups, sit-up, whatever it might be. There's going to be movements that I don't do well with that Jerry's going to do a lot better with, and vice versa, right? And I think as coaches, we have to see that, and we have to know like, hey, when is this actually a problem? And when is this actually like hey, I should just kind of let this go and see where it goes, right? And obviously as coaches, we have to make that decision, and we have to kind of put people in a position where they're not going to injure themselves, right? We don't want to be ridiculous and let people do something like absolutely stupid, right? But we also don't want to stop someone from exploring movement and figuring something out that works better for them in their journey, right? And I think for me, like that's a big thing where it's like, when you start to micromanage your athletes, you almost stop them from getting results, right? And you almost stop them from making those decisions in the movement pattern and the exercise in the session that's going to get them that extra little bit, right? Like imagine if, because you're stopping someone from just letting them kind of get through the movement, they're not able to get that extra 10 pounds. And instead of pushing 95%, they're pushing 85%. And they're not actually getting that adaptation that you really need inside that movement, right? That's a very, granule thing. Like that's like a very, very small specific detail. But that sort of thing adds up over time where it's like, hey, someone's been actually only doing 70% because you want them to have some specific pattern or movement that you've seen on Instagram and TikTok and doesn't actually relate to this person's morphology or, anatomy or physiology, whatever it might be. And you're actually holding them back by over cueing them and putting them in positions that don't make sense, right? So it's our job as coaches to see this, understand it, and allow people to make decisions inside of those, and then kind of guide them of like, hey, I would like to see this. How does this feel? Okay, maybe it's just not it, right? Maybe the movement doesn't work for you. Let's change it, right? Maybe the sets and reps don't work for you. Let's change it. Maybe the grip's giving out. Let's change it, right? There might be certain things where it's like, hey, like simple as this, right? And this is a big thing for me that I feel when I go heavier, and I've seen in my clients, is sometimes like we'll be doing deadlifts, right? And it's like, or rows, for example, and their back's rounding, or they're not able to keep that position, or whatever the thing might be, and you're cueing, and you're like, damn, like what's going on? But then it's just literally a grip issue, and
Yeah.
you adjust
Grip
it and use
in the round.
straps,
Yeah.
and then it looks like everything changed in an instant, right?
Hmm.
And it's like now their back's not rounded, now they're pulling the bar where it needs to be pulled. So it's like sometimes the stuff we're looking at isn't actually the problem, right? And that's why we have to stop being symptomatic coaches, where it's like, wow, my shoulder hurts, or wow, there's something wrong with my shoulder, I have to look at the shoulder, right? It's like, okay, well, what's causing that stuff to happen from there, right? Oftentimes it's not, oh, my wrist is hurting. It's like, okay, well, my wrist is hurting because I don't get certain rotation at the elbow on certain, like, it's those types of things where it's like everything kind of leads from the root and then branches out. And that's where we need to, as coaches, kind of see this stuff and be able to decipher them and separate them and say, okay, maybe this person just needs to learn more, and they just need to get under some weight, and let's actually see what their body does, versus, okay, we're about to go for a 495 deadlift. All right, let's remember the things that we need to remember, right? We're about to go for a specific adaptation inside this thing, or we're looking for a specific performance. This needs to happen to see that, right? But when people are starting to explore and learn patterns, we just got to kind of let them learn.
Yeah. I think we talked about this in the autonomy. Like we had an episode on autonomy
Mm-hmm.
in season 1, and I think we spoke that we basically both do the same thing. Where after a set, before we cue or do anything or change anything, we always say, "How'd that feel? What do you think about that set?"
Yeah.
That's every time I will leave it up to them. Even if I think they should go up and weight because the weight is looking perfect and all this stuff, I'm like, "What do you think about the weight? Do you want to stay or go up?" And if they're like, I don't know, what do you think? And I'm gonna be like, well, how did it feel? And I try to get the answer out of them first. And if they're like, maybe stay, I'm like, I'm gonna make you go up just because it looked good in this and this and this.
And
I want you to
sometimes
feel
as
the
a coach,
difference.
you have to. Like
Yeah,
sometimes as a
yeah.
coach, like you're seeing it where it's like, hey, you know, I know you're comfortable here. I know this feels okay, but like I know you can do more, so we're gonna do more, right? Because
Exactly.
again, as a client, they're not gonna like. And this is another thing too. If you give them confidence in that, and you let and that's great. Like obviously we talked about this, and the way Jerry just explained that, or the way you just explained that, was great because it shows like, hey, I'm gonna give you some autonomy, right? I'm gonna let you decide, but like if you're sandbagging, I'm gonna do it for you,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
Like if I know
gonna
you
give you a
can do
slap on
more
the
and you
wrist.
know you
Yeah.
can do more, I'm gonna do more for you, and you're gonna get there, right? But also it's good to understand because when you give people that autonomy where they're like, hey, I think I could do more, and you start to see that initiative being taken, now you're golden. Like now you know you've done
Mhm.
your job. Now you know they're feeling it, they're feeling confident, and they know what to feel and look for inside the pattern to say, I feel like I could go up a little bit. Like I feel like I got a little bit of room, right? And then once we get to those higher ranges where they start to get uncomfortable and they're like, I don't really know. It's like, I think you got 5 more pounds. Let's give it a shot, right? And you see and you learn, right? Because as much as we want to, keep people in that zone of like being able to continue to grow, we need to push those limits on occasion. It doesn't mean every single session, but we also need to push them to the point where, again, they're able to kind of to see like, does this work or does this not work, right?
Yeah, if
And
they
I
can't
think
learn on their own, then that's
exactly.
the biggest thing. Like they won't get anything out of it. And your goal as a coach, we've talked about that before too, is like coach them as well as you can. Doesn't mean do everything for them. Like even the point like I don't even like grabbing different weights for my clients sometimes because like they just get in this mode where they're just like looking around. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
you go grab this, I'll put this away,
Yeah.
and I'll give them something to do that way too. Because eventually, like if they're in the gym on their own, something as simple as putting a weight away, they're gonna be like, nah, I don't want to do
Perfect
that.
example, right? Perfect
Yeah.
example. I hurt my shoulder. So today I had clients couldn't lift half the shit that I normally could. And
Mm-hmm.
like had I not made them kind of do that stuff, not like I always did it with them, but it was that same idea where it's like, all right, I want you to do this. I'm going to go put this away. Let's load this up. We're going to put a 25 and a 10 on your side. I'm going to put it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Those little things where it's like now I literally can't lift that much. And like I have to rely on them to do the things that they need to get the session done. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's the type of thing you want as a coach. So you don't have to be. So a client's like, oh, well, what do I do? And it's like, well, I guess I never explained this to you, or I
Yeah.
never talked about it. But yeah, and like the sessions ran smoothly. Everything ran good. They got the workout they needed. I got what I needed out of it, and making sure that they're doing what they need to do, getting the results, completing the session, and moving on to the next thing, right? So that's the important piece, and that's where that comes in. And I think this segues into the next section really, really good, because us as coaches, we need to know, like, we need to read the room, right? We need to understand, like, when is it time to cue and when is it time to just step back, right? What are we looking for, and what are those things that we're actually going to see inside of coaching or inside of the client that are like, hey, this person needs a cue, right? If someone's frustrated, if they're just kind of like struggling with the movement, it might just be a conversation of, like Jerry kind of mentioned, of like, hey, how's this feeling? Like, what are you feeling, right? And it might just very well be, I don't know, I'm feeling tired today, right? And it's like, okay, well, like, you know, are you feeling anything inside the movement? Are you feeling like the weight's too heavy? Like, what's going on? I just didn't really sleep that well last night, right? That might be it. Like, maybe they just don't need, like, there's not doing anything wrong. They're just a little bit tired. There's no cues that need to be had, right? And that's it, right? On the flip side, someone might be doing a movement. They might be really kind of like Jerry was talking about with the RDL. They're just really struggling with the movement. They're not getting it. They're neurologically, their body's not able to feel it and adapt to the stimulus or the load or the movement, whatever it might be. And this is a great opportunity to coach, right? And this is a time to say, like, all right, and again, if we're cueing past, like, again, if we're talking past 3 minutes with a single movement and we haven't done a set yet, just scrap it, right? Really, over a minute. If it's taking you a
I would
minute,
say even like a minute.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if it's taking you a minute to explain something to somebody and they're still not getting it at all, it's like, okay, let's work on this at a different time. Let's move on to something else that might help, right? Because you don't want to sit there and waste a precious time inside of a session where you really only get like an hour or two, maybe 3 at most a week with somebody to give them the most amount of results possible. You can do that in a warm up. You can do that after the session. You could do that on their own and they can practice that at home. Like, there's things that they can do that, like, when they're in the session with you, fix it, right? Don't harp on it. Don't overcoach. Don't over cue. Don't take away from the actual session and then ruin it, right? But reading the room and understanding when should I cue and when should I just step back and let them kind of do what they got to do, right? And I think that's such an important skill to learn as a coach, because oftentimes we forget that, again, these people are human and they just want to enjoy it. And again, they don't want to be barked at. Like, if they really need to fix something, let's fix it, right? And let's know how to fix it.
If they're in imminent danger and you
Yeah.
need to make a change, make the change. But if it's like, if they're going to get away with the set and you've already cued them on like 5 things, 3 things,
Yeah.
just let the set finish and be like, awesome job, great work. And then move on to the next set. Or if that's it, focus on that next week.
And that's why it's so important for notes, like taking notes in the session, right? It's like, because one of the big things I like to do too, and sometimes it's just, again, sometimes you really only have the capacity to fix one thing in a session, right? And especially early on, right? So what I like to do is I like to take notes and I like to say, hey, watch for this, right? So the next session rolls around, because oftentimes, this is another, we'll talk about this at some point, but coaches make the mistake of changing programs every single week, right? But we want to give people time with the movement, and this is one of the biggest reasons why, because no one's going to do a new movement week 1 and get the most out of it, right? We want to give them time with the movement and time to learn and time to understand the cues. So when we're going through this thing, the worst thing to do is change it from week 1 to week 2 and then have all the cues change again, right? So if you take notes and we're working on the RDL and then we're going into week 2, it's like, hey, listen, last week we talked about a couple of these main cues, which you did really great on. This week, I really want you to focus on this, right? And we're going to focus on that. And that's going to slowly, this stuff is going to get better and improve if we cue the right way and then throw the amount of cues that are like efficient for them to actually digest at the right times, session by session, week by week, month by month, whatever it might be, and increasing those skills as we go, which is going to help us, not only get better results for the client, but retain them and have them feeling confident, like, hey, I'm actually feeling like I'm getting better at this movement, not, well, this dude just yelled at me for 45 minutes and I didn't really get that good of a workout, so maybe it's me, it's my fault, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, it's not. It's the coach's job to coach, but then it's also the coach's job to be like, all right, I think this is enough for right now. Let's switch this. Let's get to the next thing and let's adjust.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the notes is, I don't want anybody to just glance over that point and be like, oh yeah, notes are important. Yeah. Notes are so important. From down to, like, you mentioned the grip earlier, how it fixes a rounded back in like a deadlift or a row. Yeah. If you write, grip was failing, caused loss of form in this movement, then you know next time, be like, all right, once we got to this weight specifically, we started to lose form. If that happens again, we'll grab the straps, we'll move on. But if like that week, what if they grab the bar? Like maybe they did sleep poorly that week. They grab the bar that next week and they're 10 pounds heavier with perfect form. It's like, all right, grip is a really good indicator that like the central nervous system isn't firing as well as it should be. And they probably didn't sleep well. Next week they slept really well. And then they're lifting 10 pounds heavier with perfect form. So notes will also give you insight too. So you could bring that up to your client in the next session. Hey, remember last week you slept really poorly, we lost form. This week you got that extra hour and you're already lifting 10 pounds heavier. That's how important sleep is. And it drives home all these really important points that we try to make to every single one of our clients that they hear online, they hear from their friends, they hear from us, and they're just like, oh yeah, the classic eat well, sleep well. But it really brings validity and weight to the statements that you're saying.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we can transition into the next segment, which is the coach's hot take. So this is the segment where myself or Jerry, within relation to the episode today, give a hot take. And my hot take is
Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets. And my hot take is, if you don't learn how to properly cue, like efficiently and effectively, you're not a coach, you're a cheerleader, right? And I think that what tends to happen here is you see this early on in coaches' careers where they don't know what to say and they feel like they have to say something. And I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions in cueing, is that you have to say something. Sometimes you don't, right? And obviously you can give someone, praise and support. But oftentimes I've seen younger coaches or coaches who just don't know what to say turn into cheerleaders, and they end up screaming and yelling, push it, faster, go, whatever.
Come on.
Whatever it might be, right? And you end up screaming at somebody and not really giving any value, right? And just yelling. And it's just like, that's not what people need as a coach. A coach needs someone, or people need a coach who's there, who's focused, who's aware. And you see this in like big group classes, or you see this in, kind of like these chain gyms, or you see this in places with people who just don't have the experiences, as opposed to really looking and being like, cool. Like sometimes, like as a coach for myself, I find myself not talking too much, right? Because it's like, I need to look, I need to see, what am I seeing? What am I actually taking in, right? If I'm yelling and screaming and shouting at somebody while they're going, there's a time and a place for it too, right? But like, if I'm doing that constantly, I'm probably not paying attention. I'm probably not seeing everything that I need to see. And none of us are going to get the benefit of it, right? And I think that as a coach, like, you really need to dive in and learn this stuff. And again, a lot of this is learned through actually training yourself and actually feeling these patterns and being like, okay, well, like if I'm driving and I'm going through a movement and I'm cueing like elbows forward on something or elbows out on something, it doesn't really make sense, right? Or it doesn't feel like it's the right movement. Like, let me try this. And it's like, okay, well, now that worked for me, like, let me try this on somebody else. Oh, wait, that worked. Cool. Now I know that's a cue, right? And it's just like anything else. You test it. If you're using a cue on 3 different people and it's working, it's probably a great cue, right? If you're using a cue on one person and the other 4 are like, what are you talking about? Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, all right, maybe I got to find the in-between on this and go from there, right? And that, to me, is like real coaching. And that's how you learn, and that's how you get better, and that's how you get results for your client.
That I couldn't agree more with. And I think the microphone in class is the biggest.
Oh, yeah.
My biggest pet peeve. If your coach has a microphone and they have this, like the Backstreet Boys one, where it comes down to here, and they're like, all right, everybody, today we're going to do this. It's like, I want to punch you in the mouth immediately, 1. 2, you never hear it properly because with the music, it sounds like crap. Yeah. But I remember, so when I was in Denver, I was like my coaching circle. At one point, I had 2 other coaches, Dylan and Ty, really good friends of mine, and we would each get like random invitations to try out different gyms in Denver. It's like, hey, I noticed you're a coach. We'd love to have you come by, try out a class. Basically, trying to like recruit people type thing. I was like, cool. Can I bring my friends? They're like, yeah. So I'd bring them, they'd bring me, and we'd try out classes. And we went to one, and I saw the microphone, and I looked at Dylan, and I was like, here we go. He was like, dude, you invited me. And I was like, shit. Like, I don't want to do this. So the microphone, that thing, that drives me nuts. So I agree. That's cheerleading 100%.
Yeah.
Cheerleading kit is the welcome to McDonald's headset. So we got how can I help you? My hot take, it kind of goes along with what we were talking about today. Kind of goes along with what you were saying with like sometimes you don't talk much. 2 little points. First one, not all of your clients should be coached with the same intensity, manner, and cues. And also, with that being said, based on who your client is, you need to be comfortable with dead space in the session.
Yeah.
So one of the things, like I have 2 clients in mind. One of them was very much like, I want you to like constantly talk to me through the set. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like he was one of those people, he wanted to be over cued, and it almost amped him up a little bit. Like even if he was doing it right, he was like, just tell me to keep the chest up, all this thing in a squat. And I was like, chest up, come on, drive through the hips, go all the way to the top. And he just loved it. Ate it alive. Shout out to Tim. And then I had another client who was just very much like, he'd show up and he was like, yeah, I'm here to lift some heavy weight. It's like, cool, let's get it. We barely spoke in our sessions. Basically what happened was like, all right, this is the exercise we're doing. This is how I want you to do it. This is the weight we used last week. Where do you want to start this week? How you feeling? We'd pick a weight together. He'd start. In between sets, I'd be like, all right, how'd it feel? Good. You want to go up or stay? Let's go up. Cool. He sits on the bench. He's looking forward. Time? We got about 30 seconds. Okay. That was like the entire session. And then at the end, it was like, all right, I'll see you next week on Tuesday. He's like, yeah. Fist bump. See ya. That was it. You just have to be comfortable with knowing who your clients are, the type of people they are, the type of cues that they enjoy, the type of coaching that they like. But also the ones who don't like to be cued too much, be smart with how you cue, but also know that it's okay to just be standing there and be like, yeah, great set, dude. I think we should go up. You're right. And then just stand there because sometimes that's what they want. Yeah. And I think silence, like it makes people feel awkward at first, but if the more comfortable you are as a coach, it becomes a little more comfortable to sit in that silence. And I think it kind of speaks of the confidence of the coach too a little bit. Yeah. But maybe it just takes a little bit of time. But if you have clients that you feel like there's a lot of dead space, they might just have a really busy job where they're talking to people all day. If you look at me in the gym, I tell Brandon all the time, I kind of look like a serial killer. In between sets, this is me. I'm just staring at the weights in front of me. And then when it's time to go, I stop the stopwatch, I lift the weights, and I lift them. Like that's it. I just complete the set, and then I go back to staring like a crazed psychopath. So just be comfortable with dead silence.
Be comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
And our last segment of the day, we should get like a soundboard. Like, we'll have to create a soundboard so when we get to the next one, the drill, boo, 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 the drill. I think. Hey, stop that!
Just have it be Tim Robinson.
That would be so perfect.
The drill.
Oh my God. I'm gonna create one. I watch this sports radio show sometimes. It's called The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he has like a soundboard, and he has like, you know, like he'll do like the Blazing Five, which is like his football picks for the week, and it's like, welcome back to the Blazing Five with Colin Cowherd. I'm just thinking of a soundboard like that, so when we get into each segment, it just kind of clicks into it. Just Tim, hey, stop that!
I'm gonna see if I can figure this out.
That's hilarious. But
I got this for you. You ready? Hold on. Did that go through? There you go. We got that one. Yeah,
no, and then I got other ones that... We'll have to create a soundboard. I think that would be increase to the show. But so for today's the drill, and again, the drill is a piece of value that we want to give you guys that you can implement today. And I think for me, really both of us, unless Jerry has something different here, I know we kind of talked about it before, but shorten your cues as much as possible, right? Like, don't make cues these long, elaborate speeches about how to fix the movement, right? The best cues become shortened and efficient and take 1 to 3 words to say. Raise your chest, drop your hips, you know, we can, whatever.
Bend the bar.
Bend the bar. Things like that, where it's like these little phrases, these little things that pop up in the moment, in the movement that you can say that are going to be quick to the point. It's going to be like, okay, cool, right?
Shoot the bullet.
And, so little things, whatever it might be, right? And I think The cool thing is, from person to person, that might change, right? There might be something that like helps someone remember something better. That's just like, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me, right? And there's some for others. And that's why as a coach, like the idea of the day is like, cool, on the deadlift, we want to see a couple different things. But for Jerry, it might be a cue of like hips back. For me, it might be a cue of like, chest up. We don't know, right? And as you adjust person to person, where the cues are going to change, but as efficient as possible, right? That you can make that across the board. That's going to help you inside of cueing for your clients. And this is why the language is so important early on. And this is what I tell all my clients when they start. I'm like, listen, I know you guys want to get results, but there's a few things I need you to learn before we actually get to that point. One is the language that I use. 2 is the movement selection. 3 is the way I write the program. And 4 is basically like the habits of training, right? Because in month 1, a lot of people underestimate how hard it is to actually understand what someone's saying to them, right? And a lot of time is spent cueing and again, like we talked about in this episode, over cueing, and it wastes time. You don't get where you need to get. So early on, really teaching the language and teaching those little details helps, one, build, confidence and understand like, hey, I know what this person's saying back to me, right? And 2, it's helping them realize like, hey, I'm feeling like I'm learning, right? And this is a great way for coaches to focus on retention as well. Is like, if you're teaching people to learn your language, right? They're going to feel comfortable. They're going to want to learn. They're going to want to stay. They're going to want to train, right? If you're teaching people a bunch of crazy different slogans and things that you're hearing, it's like, okay, well, like, I don't really know what you're saying to me, right? And I think the most important thing is like, develop your own language, develop your own cues, let them kind of be universal across as much as possible and change them where necessary. And I'm sure all of us could go home today after listening to this, or after you hop off, whatever, you're listening to it, and be like, okay, is there a cue that I can shorten? Or have I even thought about this in the past? And maybe I can really look to shorten my cues inside of my coaching. Like, how can I look to do that, right? It's a really important thing. And I think it's something, if you guys think about today and step back and listen to, you're going to get a lot from.
Yeah, that goes almost with my my hot take, where you need to know your clients a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
I have like different languages for each client. I remember I trained this one guy, fucking awesome. He was one of those clients that like, I had a week full of people who like were a lot of injury prevention stuff and like rehab style training, and this guy was young, 26, 6'3", like 240, and he was like, I just want to clang and bang weights. I want to be like The Rock. And I was like, let's fucking get after it then. And there was one time where he was doing like RDLs or something, and I was walking around him, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna move to the other side. And he goes, what, you don't want to stand behind me and stare right into the eye of the storm? And he called his butthole the eye of the storm. And I was like, why would you say that to me? And then,
I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, from then on out, anytime like I needed him to get his hips up, I was like, show everyone the eye of the storm. And he was like, all right. And like, it wouldn't make him laugh and like break form, and he's like, got you. Like, and it was just one of those things, like the whole shoot the bullet, like shoot a bullet out of your butt, hit the wall behind you. I was like, eye of the storm. Funny. It just became, and it shorter every time. Storm. Yeah. Show him the eye. And like sometimes like you'd whisper it to him, just be like, eye of the storm, and like catch him off guard.
He just
Stuff like
transforms.
Like, oh shit. Yeah, but no, it's
has to pick something up heavy.
Having language with your clients, and like the other thing is like, if they have different backgrounds of knowledge and they use, like, let's say their career is in tech and you know a little bit about tech, find some type of analogy that works with them, because they have a different language that they use day to day at their work. Just like we say, depress and retract your scapula, down and back pockets. Like, that's the way you say it.
Something different to somebody else.
Yeah. Be depressed. But yeah, like, just finding the clients. That's easy. I just wake up. My pre-workout is depression, sadness, and body dysmorphia.
Oh, that's so stupid.
Yeah, so speak your client's language as well as your own. That's what I would add.
And actually, I guess I kind of messed this up. Our last segment is going to be mistake of the month, right? What I want you guys to do, last week we talked about our influence pick, like something we wanted you to go check out, whether it was Jerry's podcast or the book that I recommended. This week I want you to go home after this, kind of like I said in the last one, I want you to really look at the way you cue. I want you to kind of be honest with yourself. Are you a cheerleader or are you a coach, right? Do you want to be a cheerleader or do you want to be a coach, right? And really kind of sit down and look, like, when I'm cueing someone, am I getting more of, like, what did you just say to me faces? Or am I getting, okay, like, that does make sense, right? It doesn't mean you need to, be a poet and have like these beautifully written cues, right? But just be efficient inside of it. Look and kind of review what it is that you use as cues. How are you explaining things? Because I think oftentimes, again, if we actually look at how we cue and where we cue, a lot of the times we're cueing either the wrong spot or we're just not cueing efficiently, right? For example, a deadlift and an RDL, right? One of the biggest differences you're going to see inside of the RDL and the deadlift is the knee bend, right? And it's like, as we head towards the bottom of the deadlift, there's going to be a little bit of a knee bend so we can get that bar down to the ground. That difference is on the RDL. We're trying to keep that tension in the hamstring and the glutes. So we're going to keep those legs a little bit more stiff, and we're not going to bend those knees. And a lot of times with the RDL, because we're not bending the knees, you'll see a lot of like that lower back start to give, right? Because that tension or that range of motion is being stopped. So it's like, okay, well, if we know that the lower back's giving on that movement, and that's the difference between the deadlift and the RDL, then really we need to focus on that knee bend, right? And that's what we can kind of zero in on, right? And if you do that for every single movement, you're going to be able to see the little differences and be like, oh, well, I don't really need to focus on anything else because the knee bend is what matters in this pattern. And that's all I need to focus on, right? And that's the first thing, right? You might fix that and it still might be wrong, and that's when the other cues come into play. But it's really important, if you go home, look at the movements that you are programming and think, how would I cue this more efficiently, right? Like, what are the main pieces that I have? And this is part of being a coach, right? And this is where the professionalism comes in. This is where those pieces of like, hey, I want this to be a career. I have to work on these little things. I have to actually go through these movement patterns and say, how would I cue this to an athlete? How would I cue this to someone who just stepped in the foot in the gym? How would I cue this to someone who's like myself, right? And those pieces are going to help you improve, get better results, and obviously at the end of the day, become a better coach and not a cheerleader.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect.
So, cool. I think that's it for me today. I think, Jerry, is there anything you want to add to the
I got nothing.
session? No?
Just remember, eye of the storm.
Eye of the storm. Let's do a test. All right, next week, I'm going to be able to move my shoulder past here.
All right.
All right?
I'm going to remember that.
All right. It's going to be...
But you
elbow.
cheated. You went like this. You
I
did
know. My elbow...
You did a
I was
teapot.
trying to show you. My elbow is going to be in line with my shoulder next week.
Oh, that high, huh?
Actually, wait.
Huh?
Right here.
Huh?
Okay, yeah, right there. Yeah. So it's going to be in line with my shoulder next week.
All right. So we're talking parallel to the floor. Full
Yes.
90 degrees.
Yes.
All right.
I'll be
Heard
able
it
to do
here
the
first.
robot next week.
Eye of the storm robot. I'm gonna turn.
I'll be a clanker next week.
Oh, no. He's going to take my job.
I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Check out your coaching cueing, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.